Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, thinks that there is not going to be a recession, and if there is one, it's probably going to be pretty mild. Now, I, Michael Bordenero, just some small little YouTube guy, am definitely not an economist, but I don't know if I agree with this, so we're going to deep dive into an article written by USA Today that kind of goes over some of the factors that call for a recession and why Mark Zandi thinks that the recession is not going to be very severe. He thinks it's going to be just a mild recession, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. So the first thing, of course, is the economy. The stock market is down. Everybody knows that the stock market has been down year to date, and we're fighting record high inflation. Right now, the official number is 8.3%, but I think we can all agree here that the number's probably much higher, especially for other things that we buy we really need, like food and gas, insurance if you live in Florida. Not only is the S&P 500 down 20% from its peak earlier this year, but we're getting very close to an overall bear market in the stock market. So that's the first thing pointing towards a recession. We also still have plenty of COVID cases in the US, and combine that with the Russia and Ukrainian war and how this disrupts supply chain issues even further, this definitely all points to a recession. But the big question is there going to be one? And if there is, how bad is it going to be? Now, I personally think we're probably already in a recession. It's just not official yet, because the thing is this: we've already had the first negative quarter of GDP growth for this year, and all we need is a couple more months of that, and we're officially in a recession. But then the question is, are we going to drag that on? Is it going to turn into a depression? Are things going to get worse? We don't really know, but the way things are looking right now, it's not looking great. Now, according to this article, they say here is one plausible recession scenario. As prices and interest rates climb and battered stock market makes investors feel less wealthy, consumers will pull back spending. Businesses will rein in investment and hiring while expanding layoffs, which we're already seeing right now. Economic activity will start to slow and job losses will mount. And this was the case I've made in a couple of my previous videos of how we're going to be getting more foreclosures and how we're going to get more houses on the market, whether you like it or not. Because the thing is this, guys, if people lose their jobs and they can't afford to pay their mortgage, then they're going to be in a situation where they're forced to sell. They may not go into foreclosure because it takes a long time to actually complete the foreclosure process. Also, you need to be more than 90 days delinquent a lot of times for that process to even begin. So going into foreclosure and actually seeing that property come to market is a very long, drawn out process. And only just now we're starting to see the properties that would have been in foreclosure during the pandemic but weren't because of the reliefs in place coming onto the market. So we're already seeing that happening. But we have definitely not seen any foreclosures come from the looming recession yet, only because these layoffs and the downturn is only beginning. And this time around, some of those people might not go into foreclosure. Maybe some of them will actually be able to get another job and stay on their feet. Maybe they have enough savings or their spouse makes enough money to pay for the mortgage temporarily while they can just look for another job or find another source of income. However, that's not going to be the case for everyone, and some people who especially bought a home that they could barely afford with the two-income household will be in a situation where they're either going to be facing foreclosure, short sale, or just selling the home because they simply cannot afford it anymore. And that is going to increase inventory in the housing market in general, which eventually will bring prices down. Now, I just want to say a real quick thank you to all of my new viewers and subscribers out there. Thank you so much for watching my videos. It really helps the channel. And I just want to let you all know that I do offer one-on-one consulting calls. If you ever want to discuss real estate, I do have a link for that always down in the description below. Now, according to Mark Zandi, he puts the chances of a recession at 33% in the next 12 months and 50% within 2 years. So it sounds like the longer time goes on, the more he thinks we might actually be hitting a recession. But then he also goes on to say that he thinks we may end up sidestepping this recession altogether, which he doesn't really go on to say how he thinks the United States can actually sidestep the recession. I don't really see how we can. The Fed is not raising rates at a fast enough rate. Inflation's still completely out of control. If they wanted to fix this overnight, they would be raising interest rates to 10% right now, maybe even 12%, depending on what the real inflation numbers are. So why aren't they doing that? Because they know it's going to crash the economy even further, and no politician wants that happening on their watch. So they're being very careful and slowly increasing the interest rates, trying not to rock the boat too much. But, they say that inflation is their biggest concern, yet they're not really acting like it, because I feel like if they really wanted to address inflation, they would just be increasing those rates basically overnight to get this under control. We also have mortgage applications and existing home sales going down along with the rising interest rates, and we're also seeing more and more layoffs coming as well. Mark Zandi thinks that if there is going to be a recession, it won't come until the end of this year, and it will probably last 5 or 6 months. Economist from Wells Fargo also believes that the recession will be very mild, and their reasoning for the recession being mild is as following. They say that Americans still have $2.6 trillion in excess savings from hunkering down during the pandemic from federal stimulus checks and other aid. Even if inflation and higher interest rates force people to adjust spending, they're not going to close their wallets just as summer and a resumption of traveling and other activities beckon. Now, to me, this is contradicting information. We still have this statistic that like 70% of Americans can't even afford a $600 emergency. Yet, these economists think that all these people have just $2.6 trillion in excess money sitting on the sidelines ready to be deployed for summer vacations and fun, when housing is at an all-time high, food prices are at an all-time high, gas prices are at an all-time high, and interest rates on homes are high as well. I just don't believe it, guys. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that's true? I don't think so many people are sitting on all this cash like they're saying. Solid household and firm balance sheets is another one of their reasons, saying that household debt payments amounted to 9.3% of disposable income, and during the Great Recession right before then was at 13.2%. Corporate debt is at record high, but in line with long-term trends relative to GDP. They also think that there's few excesses in the economy, saying that severe recessions are often triggered by dramatic imbalances. But aren't we in a tremendous imbalance right now with the housing market? Isn't there this huge supply and demand issue that everybody's talking about? I believe that's a pretty big imbalance. Didn't we print $6 trillion during the COVID pandemic? And isn't that a huge imbalance, considering that over 80% of all US dollars ever made went into existence over the last 2 years? Isn't that an imbalance in our economy? It's baffling to me that these things are not being addressed by major economists like this. Like I said, I'm just a small YouTube guy, but I think with my head and just common sense, and I look at the things that have happened in the past couple of years, and I just don't see how these guys are not addressing these issues, and they just think that everything is going to be fine. Now, maybe it will be, and I'll be the first one to say, hey, this is great. Everything's still good. People are still working. We can all still afford our bills. Fantastic. But it's just not looking like that right now. Now, one thing I will give them is they say that another one of their reasonings is the strong labor market. There's a ton of jobs out there, which is definitely true. There is no shortage of jobs. I did a road trip last year across the country, and literally every single city I stopped in, there was no shortage of businesses that had for hire signs in the windows. So there are plenty of places out there looking to hire, and I don't think there is a shortage of jobs out there whatsoever. And they also think that the supply chain issues should ease up eventually, which of course eventually they will ease up, but so far they really haven't. Now, another economist from Deutsche Bank, David Lando, is much more bearish on the economy, and he thinks the Fed is simply not doing enough. One thing that might happen in a recession is the Fed's interest rate will go up to 5%, not 3%, which was what it was expected prior to now, which will definitely spark a pullback in consumer and business spending. And this, of course, will lead to a rise in unemployment. And Once again, guys, going back to how this is going to affect the housing market, the more unemployment we have, the more listings we're going to see come to sale on the market, simply because people will be forced to sell. Just never forget that. Unemployment equals more listing opportunities, more houses coming to market, which is going to be solving our biggest problem that we have, which typically has been just not enough homes for sale. And another top economist, Joseph Lavorgna, he thinks that the Fed will actually reverse their course and be lowering their interest rates once they continue to see the stock market go down and unemployment go up. Because as soon as those things start to happen, they might be concerned about the economy more than inflation, which really doesn't make any sense, because with the way inflation is going, if they just keep letting it go at this rate, we're not going to have an economy left. The Fed is in a very difficult position right now where they really need to just fight inflation. That does need to be the number one priority, because if they don't, no one's going to be able to afford a loaf of bread in a couple of years from now, let alone make their house payment. So inflation should be definitely the top priority. And if it means people need to lose their jobs for now, and it means that interest rates on buying and borrowing are high for now, then that's what it means. As a nation, that's a small sacrifice for us all to make for things to get better in the long run, versus having things be a little bit better for now, but then terrible for decades to come. I mean, choose your poison, guys. I don't know which one you would prefer, but I would definitely prefer a little bit of temporary pain for the long-term gain than the opposite. But hey, it's not just me talking about recession. In fact, I did a video a few weeks ago where Fannie Mae directly called for a recession. And if you want to learn more about that, then check out this video right over here, and I'll catch you guys over there.